Amora's heart pounded as she sprinted down the narrow corridor of her new Korean school, her suitcase thudding against the tile floor. Students' eyes followed her like shadows, whispers curling in the air like smoke. She had just arrived, and already something about this place didn't feel right. She skidded to a stop, gasping for breath, her dark eyes scanning the crowd. A tall boy in a crisp uniform gave her a long, assessing look before smirking and walking away. Something about the way he looked at her made her stomach twist. She dropped her suitcase near the entrance and took a deep breath. "Okay, Amora," she muttered under her breath. "You got this." But the sticky air, the strange sounds, and the weight of thousands of curious eyes were enough to make her knees wobble. She tried to ignore them, adjusting the straps of her backpack. "Before we proceed, I'd like to know which country you're watching from. Like this video and hit that subscribe button. Now, let's continue." "Hey," a soft voice called, startling her. She turned to see a girl, slightly shorter than her, with a warm smile and sparkling eyes that seemed to see right through her. "Are you new here?" "Yes," Amora said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just arrived from Nigeria." The girl laughed softly. "Welcome to Korea, and to one of the most intense schools you'll ever attend. I'm Jizu." Something in Jizu's tone was both comforting and mysterious. Amora couldn't help but smile, even as anxiety gnawed at her. "I'm Amora," she said. Jizu's smile widened. "Don't worry. Stick with me, and you might survive your first week without wanting to run home." She winked, and Amora felt a strange flutter in her chest. It was confusing, almost electrifying. As they walked together, Amora noticed the way the other students whispered and darted glances at her. A few snickers escaped, but Jizu shielded her, guiding her through the maze of students and hallways. "You'll get used to it," Jizu said casually. But her eyes flickered with a hint of warning. "Some people here, they don't like outsiders." Amora frowned. "Why?" Jizu shrugged. "Old traditions, pride, jealousy. You'll see soon enough. Just stay alert." The day passed in a blur of introductions, lessons, and awkward attempts to understand the language. By lunch, Amora felt the exhaustion weighing her down, but also a strange determination. She couldn't let fear rule her first day. "Do you want to sit with me?" Jizu asked, gesturing to a quieter corner of the cafeteria. "Trust me, it's safer than sitting anywhere else." As they walked, a group of senior students blocked their path. One of them, tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp eyes that seemed to pierce straight through her, smiled in a way that made Amora's stomach do a backflip. Well, he said, his tone smooth but threatening. "New girl, huh?" Amora swallowed hard, her pulse racing. "Why yes," she stammered. He leaned closer. "I hope you're ready to play by our rules. Because here, rules aren't suggestions." Before she could respond, Jizu stepped forward, her hand lightly brushing Amora's arm. "Leave her alone," she said firmly, though her voice was calm. The senior boy's eyes flicked to Jizu, and a smirk curved his lips. "I like your spirit," he said, then walked away, though not without a lingering glance at Amora that sent shivers down her spine. "Don't worry about him," Jizu said once he disappeared. "He's all talk, mostly." She paused, then added softly, almost as if sharing a secret, "But be careful. Some people here, they enjoy making others suffer. Especially if you're different." Amora nodded, a chill running down her spine. But the flutter in her chest returned when their hands brushed as they passed trays of food. By the time the school day ended, Amora was exhausted, but not broken. She dragged her suitcase to the dormitory, every sound amplified in the strange new environment. Her roommate was nowhere to be seen. Leaving her alone in the unfamiliar room, she unpacked slowly, her thoughts racing. That night, just as she was about to drift off, she heard a faint scratching at the window. Heart hammering, she approached cautiously. Outside, shadows moved, but when she peered closer, there was nothing there. She shook her head, trying to convince herself it was just nerves. But when she returned to her bed, she found a small note lying on her pillow. "You don't belong here." Her hands trembled as she held it. Who could have done this? Why target her on the very first day? Fear mingled with determination. She wasn't going to run. Not now, not ever. The next morning, Amora joined Jizu in the cafeteria. Jizu gave her a knowing look. "You saw the note?" Amora nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, what do I do?" "Stick with me. Keep your head down, but be ready," Jizu said, her eyes serious. Then, with a playful smirk, she added, "Also, don't let anyone see you're afraid. Confidence is your best weapon." Amora tried to smile, but the knot of fear in her stomach was persistent. Later that day, as she navigated her classes, she noticed the same tall boy from lunch lingering near the hallway. Their eyes met briefly, and she felt her breath hitch. There was something magnetic about him, something dangerous, yet thrilling. During break, she found herself in the library, seeking refuge among the quiet rows of books. But as she reached for a textbook, she felt a shadow behind her. "Need some help?" a smooth voice whispered. Her head jerked up. The boy from earlier stood there, leaning casually against a bookshelf, his eyes locked on hers. I'm fine," she said, her voice trembling slightly. He stepped closer, a smirk tugging at his lips. "You don't look fine. You look scared." Her pulse raced, a mixture of fear and inexplicable excitement. "I'm not scared," she said, trying to sound confident. He murmured, leaning closer so that she could feel the heat of his presence. "You should be. But that doesn't mean I can't enjoy watching you." Amora's heart pounded so loud she thought he might hear it. Was he flirting? Threatening? Or a little bit of both? Before she could respond, Jizu appeared, her eyes narrowing at the boy. "Back off," she said, her tone low but dangerous. He raised his hands in mock surrender, smirking. Fine. But she's interesting." He walked away, leaving Amora trembling, though a strange thrill lingered. As she returned to her dorm that evening, another note slipped under her door. "You're being watched. Always." Amora held the note, her hands shaking. But this time, a spark of defiance lit in her chest. Whoever was trying to intimidate her, whoever this boy was, she wasn't going to back down. She looked at her reflection in the mirror, straightened her shoulders, and whispered to herself, "You came here to fight. You're not leaving until you win." And with that, her journey, full of danger, secrets, and unexpected romance, truly began. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see what happens next. Amora's about to face her first real test, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. The next morning, Amora woke with a mixture of dread and determination. The sun was barely up, casting long shadows through the dorm windows. She forced herself out of bed, shaking off the uneasy feeling that had nested in her chest. Today, she had classes, tests, and the ever-present eyes of the school staring at her. But she wasn't going to be intimidated. Not today. As she made her way to the cafeteria, she noticed him, the tall boy from yesterday, leaning casually against the lockers. Their eyes met, and she felt her heart skip a beat. His smirk was still there, confident and teasing. He nodded slightly, a subtle acknowledgement, and then disappeared down the hallway. Jizu approached her, carrying her tray. "Morning," she said, voice light but with an edge. "Ready for the chaos?" Amora forced a small smile. "As ready as I'll ever be." They found a quiet corner, and Amora began to eat in near silence. But the whispers didn't stop. She caught fragments of sentences. "She thinks she belongs here? Foreign girl, too bold. Watch her." Jizu leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Ignore them. They're all bark and no bite, for now. Just make sure you know who to trust." Amora nodded, her mind racing. Every glance felt loaded, every laugh at the other tables like a secret message she wasn't part of. Then, unexpectedly, Jizu nudged her playfully. "Relax. Don't let them see you sweat." And, her voice dropped to a near whisper, "Don't let him see you sweat either." Amora's stomach fluttered. "Him?" Jizu smirked knowingly. "The tall one. You'll figure it out." Later that day, Amora entered her first lab session, a chemistry class that she had expected to be routine. Instead, the air buzzed with tension. Students whispered in small circles, glancing at her as she took a seat. Her hands shook slightly as she unpacked her notebooks. "New girl," a voice said from behind her. She spun around to find him leaning casually over the edge of the lab bench. You're everywhere today. Amora stammered, flustered. Relax, he said smoothly, his dark eyes locked onto hers. You're cute when you're flustered. Heat rushed to her cheeks, and she looked away quickly, pretending to focus on her notebook. But she could feel his gaze following her every move. The lab instructor's voice cut through the tension. Pair up, he commanded. Amora scanned the room, hoping to avoid pairing with him. But fate wasn't on her side. He was her partner. Lucky me, he said, leaning over the table, too close for comfort. Let's see if you're as smart as you are pretty. Amora's pulse quickened. She forced herself to focus on the experiment, but her hands trembled slightly. Every movement of his arm brushing against her sent tiny shocks through her body. She had to keep her cool. Hours passed in a mix of whispered instructions, accidental touches, and stolen glances. Amora realized that she was both terrified and strangely drawn to him. He was dangerous, yes, but there was something about his intensity, the way he made her heart race, that she couldn't ignore. By the end of the day, her nerves were frayed. She returned to her dorm, hoping for a quiet evening. But waiting on her bed was another note, this one in bold, jagged handwriting. You think you can hide? We see everything. Amora's breath caught. The words weren't just a threat, they were a declaration. Someone was watching, someone who wanted to control her. Fear rose, but so did a surge of defiance. She wasn't going to let them intimidate her. Jizu appeared moments later, as if on cue. Another note? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Amora nodded, handing it over. Jizu read it quickly, her expression darkening. They're serious, she said quietly. This isn't just kids messing around. Someone here wants to make sure you regret being here. Amora felt a shiver run through her. Why me? Jizu's gaze softened slightly. Because you're new. You're different. And that scares them. The next day, Amora tried to focus on classes, but the tension was suffocating. Every glance felt like judgment. Every whisper seemed aimed at her. Even in the cafeteria, she could feel eyes burning into her back. Then it happened, during gym class, a ball hit her squarely in the shoulder, but when she turned, no one had thrown it. She felt the sting, her heart hammering. Someone had done it deliberately. See, Jizu said, sidling up beside her. They're testing you. Seeing how you react. Don't give them the satisfaction of fear. Amora clenched her fists but managed to nod. I won't. I'll prove them wrong. Later, in the quiet of the library, she found herself alone with him again. He leaned against a bookshelf, arms crossed, a smirk playing at his lips. You're tough, he said softly, stepping closer. I like that. Most girls here would have run by now. Amora felt her breath hitch. I'm not most girls, she said, trying to sound confident even as her heart raced. He tilted his head, studying her. I can tell. But you have no idea what you're up against. Amora's pulse raced. Try me. For a moment, the world seemed to shrink to just the two of them. His proximity, the teasing tone, the intensity in his eyes, it was intoxicating. Then, without warning, the door burst open. A shadowed figure appeared, and both of them froze. The stranger's voice was low, cold, and dripping with menace. I warned you, you shouldn't have come here. Amora's stomach dropped. Was this a warning? A threat? Or something more dangerous? She looked at him, expecting protection, but even he seemed uncertain. The shadow disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, leaving only the echo of its words and the pounding of Amora's heart. She turned to him, eyes wide. Who was that? He shook his head, expression unreadable. Someone you don't want to know. But don't worry. I've got you. Amora's heart skipped another beat. The tension, the danger, the undeniable chemistry, it was all too much. And yet, despite the fear, she felt a strange thrill. She was in the middle of something bigger than herself, something dangerous, and maybe, just maybe, thrilling. If your heart is racing just like Amora's, hit that like button, comment your theories, and subscribe to see what happens next. Things are about to get even more intense. That night, Amora lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The words of the shadowed figure echoed in her mind, you shouldn't have come here. Her fingers traced the edge of the note she had received earlier, the jagged handwriting still burning in her memory. Whoever was behind this wanted her afraid. But fear wasn't going to stop her. Not now. The next morning, the school seemed even more hostile. Students who had been merely indifferent were now openly glaring. Amora felt every stare like a needle, but she tried to ignore them, keeping her head high as she navigated the crowded hallways. During homeroom, the teacher announced a group project, pairing students strategically. Amora's stomach sank when she saw that she was paired again with him, the tall boy who both thrilled and terrified her. "You just can't stay away from me, can you?" he said, leaning slightly toward her as they collected their materials. His voice was low, teasing, making her heart skip. "I didn't exactly have a choice," she replied, forcing a casual tone even as her palms sweated. He smirked, brushing past her shoulder. "I like that honesty." The group project required them to work late in the science lab. As the day stretched on, Amora found herself increasingly aware of his presence. Every time he leaned over to examine her calculations, his arm brushed hers. Every time he spoke, his voice was just a little too close, sending shivers down her spine. "You're really good at this," he said, his dark eyes locking onto hers. "I didn't expect it." Amora's cheeks flushed. "Thanks, you're not so bad yourself," she murmured, surprised at the words slipping out. He tilted his head, a slow, teasing smile spreading across his face. "I'll take that as a compliment." As the sun began to set, the lab emptied around them. The lights cast long shadows across the room, creating an almost cinematic tension. Amora tried to focus on their project, but the closeness, the intensity of his gaze, the thrill of danger mingled with attraction, it was almost overwhelming. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and a shadow slipped in. Amora stiffened, recognizing the figure from the library incident. "You think you can hide, foreign girl," the figure hissed. Amora's pulse spiked. Before she could react, he stepped between her and the intruder, his stance protective. "Back off," he said, his tone low but deadly serious. The figure froze, then disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, leaving only the lingering threat in the air. Amora's hands trembled. Why is this happening to me?" she whispered. He looked at her, a mixture of frustration and concern in his eyes. "Because you're different. Because you're strong. And because you make people uneasy." Amora's breath hitched. There was something in his gaze, a flicker of something more than concern, something she couldn't quite name. But before she could ask, he stepped closer, their proximity electric. "You should be careful," he murmured, his voice almost brushing her ear. "This school, it's not what it seems." "I'm not afraid," she said, though her voice wavered slightly. "I won't let them scare me." He smiled faintly, the corners of his lips tugging upward. "Good. Because fear won't save you. Only strength and maybe a little luck." Their eyes locked, and for a moment, the rest of the world seemed to fade away. The danger, the tension, the mystery, they all existed around them, but in that instant, it was just the two of them. Amora's heart raced, a mix of fear and something far more intoxicating. She had never felt anything like this before. The closeness, the protective aura, the teasing tone, it was thrilling, terrifying, and irresistible all at once. As she packed up her things, he leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "Don't let them see your fear. And don't forget. I've got your back. For now." Amora's pulse quickened. "For now?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. He smirked. "For now. But that could change, if you push too hard." Her mind whirled. Every interaction with him was a dangerous game, and she didn't know if she wanted to win or lose. Later that evening, in the dormitory, another note appeared on her bed. "We know what you did today. You're stepping too close to danger." Amora's stomach knotted. The threats were escalating. But a spark of defiance burned inside her. She wasn't going to back down. Whoever was targeting her would learn that she was not so easily intimidated. Jizu appeared as if sensing her turmoil. "Another note?" she asked softly. Amora nodded. "Yes, they're getting bolder." Jizu frowned, her eyes serious. "That means they're watching closely. You need to be careful. But you also need to be smart." Don't underestimate them or your feelings. Amora blinked. My feelings? Jizu smirked faintly. You know exactly what I mean. He's dangerous, yes, but there's something between you two. Don't ignore it, but don't let it cloud your judgment either. Amora's cheeks flushed. She couldn't deny it. There was something magnetic about him, something that drew her in even as danger surrounded her. And despite Jizu's warning, part of her didn't want to resist. The next day, during a history class, Amora found herself struggling with the material. She felt a hand lightly brush hers, and her head jerked up. He was there, leaning casually against her desk, dark eyes studying her. Need some help? He asked, his voice low, teasing. Amora's heart raced. Maybe, she admitted, trying to sound nonchalant. He leaned closer, so close that she could feel his breath. Good. Because I don't like watching you struggle. Their proximity was electric. Amora's thoughts scattered as he pointed to the textbook, guiding her through the lesson. Every brush of his hand, every low whisper, made her pulse hammer. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the hallway, and both of them jumped. They glanced toward the door just as another shadow slipped by, too fast to identify. Amora's heart pounded. Someone was clearly orchestrating these incidents, watching her every move. He stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. Stay close to me. Trust me. Amora swallowed hard, feeling a mixture of fear, excitement, and something else she couldn't quite name. I trust you, she whispered. He smiled faintly, his eyes dark and unreadable. Good. Because you'll need that trust. Things are about to get a lot worse. As the day ended, Amora felt both exhausted and exhilarated. Danger, mystery, and undeniable chemistry intertwined, making her feel alive in ways she had never imagined. She knew one thing for certain, nothing at this school would ever be simple. And one wrong move could change everything. Hit like, comment your thoughts on who's behind these threats, and subscribe if you want to follow Amora's heart-racing journey. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The next morning, Amora felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on her. Every step through the hallways made her feel exposed, like she was walking into a trap. Yet, the pull toward him, the tall boy with the dark, magnetic eyes, was impossible to resist. Every glance sent her pulse racing, every casual brush of his hand against hers a spark she couldn't ignore. During lunch, she tried to keep a low profile, but whispers followed her like a shadow. Jizu appeared beside her, sliding into the seat with a grin. I brought reinforcements, she said, nodding toward a group of her friends. Stick with us. Don't let them isolate you. Amora nodded, grateful for the company. She tried to eat, but her mind kept drifting to the tall boy, who was watching from across the room. Their eyes met briefly, and he smirked, sending a thrill through her chest that she couldn't hide. After lunch, she had a free period and decided to visit the library, hoping for a moment of peace. But as she stepped inside, she felt it again, the sensation of being watched. Her eyes scanned the room, landing on him leaning casually against a shelf, dark eyes locked on hers. Need some company? He asked, his voice low and teasing. Amora's cheeks flushed. I guess, she admitted, her voice barely audible. He stepped closer, so close that she could feel the heat of his presence. You're always on edge, he murmured, almost as if scolding her. Relax. Or at least pretend to. She tried to focus on the book in front of her, but her attention kept flicking to him. Every time he smiled, every time his gaze lingered, her heart raced. She had never felt anything like this before, thrill, fear, and desire all tangled together. Do you ever stop thinking about danger? She asked, finally daring to meet his eyes. He tilted his head, a slow smirk forming. Danger's part of the fun. And right now, you make it all more interesting. Before she could respond, the lights flickered, plunging the room into shadows for a split second. When they returned, a figure was standing near the entrance. Amora froze. It was the same shadowed person from before. You're stepping too close, the figure hissed, voice dripping with menace. Her stomach dropped. Why me? She whispered, more to herself than anyone else. He stepped in front of her, protective and commanding. Because you're here, and someone doesn't like it. But I won't let them touch you. The figure vanished as suddenly as it appeared, leaving a lingering sense of threat in the air. Amora's heart raced, adrenaline surging. She could feel his presence behind her, solid and reassuring, yet tinged with danger. "Who are they?" she asked, turning to him. He shook his head. "Someone who wants to make sure you know your place. But don't worry, we'll figure it out." Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the world shrank to just the two of them. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and Amora felt a jolt of electricity. She had no idea if it was the danger or him or both that made her heart race like this. "You can't keep hiding," he whispered, so close that her lips almost brushed his. "And you can't run from what's coming." Her pulse raced uncontrollably. "I'm not going to run," she said, though her voice trembled slightly. "Good," he murmured, stepping back just enough to let her breathe, though the intensity in his gaze didn't waver. "Because the school, it's only going to get worse. And so will the people watching you." Amora nodded, a mixture of fear and excitement churning inside her. The danger, the attraction, the thrill, it was overwhelming, yet she couldn't look away. Later that afternoon, during a group activity, Amora felt someone brush past her deliberately, sending her papers scattering across the floor. She looked up to see a group of seniors smirking, clearly testing her limits. "You okay?" the tall boy asked, stepping in, his presence immediately cutting through the tension. Yes," she stammered, heart still racing. He gave her a sharp look. "Don't let them see weakness. Ever." Amora nodded, trying to steady herself. She was learning quickly that survival here wasn't just about academics, it was about reading people, anticipating threats, and controlling her own fear. That evening, as she returned to her dorm, another note awaited her on the bed: "You're getting too comfortable. That's dangerous." Amora held the note tightly, determination surging. She wasn't going to be intimidated. She wouldn't back down. She was starting to realize that survival meant fighting back and maybe, just maybe, letting herself feel the dangerous thrill of him. Jizu appeared again, sensing the tension. "Another one?" she asked, voice calm but sharp. "Yes," Amora said, handing it over. "They're escalating." Jizu's eyes darkened. "Then it's time to take the first real step. You can't just react anymore, you need a plan. And you need allies." Amora felt a surge of adrenaline. "I'm ready," she said firmly. "I'll face this. And I won't be scared." Jizu smiled faintly. "That's the spirit. But remember, some battles aren't won with strength alone. You'll need courage, and maybe a little trust in the unexpected." Amora thought of him, the tall boy, unpredictable, dangerous, and yet undeniably magnetic. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew one thing: whatever came next, she wasn't facing it alone. As she lay in bed that night, her thoughts kept returning to him, to the protective stance, the teasing words, the smoldering intensity of his gaze. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. And deep down, she knew that whatever was coming next would change everything. Don't forget to hit like, comment who you think is behind these threats, and subscribe. And trust me, you won't see what happens coming. The next day, the air at the school felt charged, almost electric. Amora could sense eyes following her everywhere, whispers trailing like shadows. Every step was heavy, each glance sharp. But she refused to let fear dominate her. She had learned, even in a few days, that survival here meant being alert, quick, and daring. Her first class of the day was advanced mathematics, a subject she excelled at but one that required intense focus. She entered the classroom and noticed him already there, leaning against a desk, a faint smirk on his lips. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, her chest skipped a beat. "You're early," she murmured, trying to sound casual, though her pulse betrayed her nerves. "I like seeing you on edge," he said, voice low and teasing, causing a rush of heat to rise in her cheeks. "It's entertaining." Amora forced herself to look away, focusing on her notebook. But she could feel his gaze lingering, an invisible weight pressing down on her, teasing, daring, intoxicating. Midway through the lesson, a sudden commotion erupted outside. Shouts, slamming doors, and hurried footsteps echoed through the hallways. Amora's heart thumped violently. Something was happening, and she felt a sinking feeling in her gut. Before she could process, A shadowed figure burst through the classroom door. The students gasped, scrambling back in fear. Amora's breath caught. She recognized the figure immediately, the one who had been sending the notes, watching her, testing her. "You," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What do you want?" The figure's eyes glinted with a cruel amusement. "You've been stepping too close. Too daring. Too curious. And now, you're going to pay." Panic surged, but before the figure could make a move, he stepped forward, her protector, the tall boy with dark, piercing eyes. "Back off," he growled, his tone low and dangerous, commanding attention. The intruder froze, assessing him. "So, this is her protector," the figure hissed. "Interesting. Let's see how long that lasts." Amora's pulse raced. She felt both terrified and inexplicably exhilarated as he moved closer to her, placing a protective hand near her shoulder. The closeness, the warmth, the silent promise of defense, it made her heart pound in a way she had never experienced. The shadowed figure's lips curled into a sneer. "You think you can stop me?" "I don't think," he said, stepping fully between them. "I know I can." For a tense moment, the room seemed frozen. Then, without warning, the figure lunged, knocking over a chair. Chaos erupted, students screamed, papers flew, and Amora's heart raced as adrenaline surged through her veins. He moved with precision, deflecting the attack effortlessly, his presence magnetic, protective, and terrifying all at once. Amora watched, wide-eyed, as he faced the intruder, strength and danger wrapped in one dangerous package. When the figure finally retreated, disappearing into the hallway, Amora exhaled shakily. Are you okay?" she asked, voice trembling, partly from fear, partly from the lingering closeness between them. He turned to her, expression softening for a brief moment. "I'm fine." "You?" I think so," she murmured, though her heart still raced violently. He offered her a faint smile, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "You have to be careful," he said quietly, almost tenderly. "They're serious. And they won't stop until they see you broken or gone." Amora felt her pulse hammer, her stomach twisting. She wanted to pull away, to be rational, but the nearness, the danger, the intensity of his gaze, it was intoxicating. "I'm not going anywhere," she said, voice trembling but determined. His eyes darkened, a mixture of warning and something else she couldn't quite name. "Good," he murmured, leaning just slightly closer, so that the air between them seemed to crackle. "Because you're in this now. Fully." For a heartbeat, everything else faded, the chaos, the fear, the room, the school. It was just the two of them, electricity sparking in the space between. Then, the intruder's ominous laughter echoed from the hallway, pulling Amora back to reality. I need to get out of here," she said hurriedly, grabbing her bag. He followed, matching her pace. "Stay close," he instructed, his tone both commanding and protective. "Don't let them isolate you. Not now, not ever." As they moved down the hallway, another note fluttered from the ceiling, landing near her feet. She picked it up with trembling hands. "You won't last the week. She belongs to us." Amora's stomach knotted. Whoever was behind this had eyes everywhere. Yet, standing beside him, she felt a flicker of courage she hadn't felt before. She wasn't alone. Not with him. That evening, in the dorm, she replayed the day's events in her mind. Fear, excitement, attraction, and adrenaline mixed in a dizzying cocktail. Her thoughts kept returning to him, his protective stance, the teasing smirk, the danger that seemed to cling to him as naturally as the air. Jizu appeared again, sensing the tension and the turmoil in Amora's mind. "You were close today," she said softly, eyes sharp. "Too close." Amora flushed. I don't know what to feel." "He's dangerous." "Yes, but..." Jizu smirked faintly. "Exactly. That's why you feel it. The danger, the thrill, the chemistry, it's all part of the game. But remember, the real danger isn't just the shadows around you, it's letting your heart guide you blindly." Amora nodded slowly, digesting her friend's words. She knew she couldn't afford to ignore the attraction, but she also had to survive. And surviving meant learning, anticipating, and being ready for the next attack. She set the note aside, her resolve hardening. The intruder thought they could intimidate her, test her limits, scare her into submission. But she was learning quickly. She wouldn't just survive, she would fight, with her mind, with her courage, and with him by her side. As she drifted to sleep that night, her thoughts were a whirlwind of adrenaline and desire. Danger and attraction intertwined, each glance, each touch, each protective gesture leaving her heart racing. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but one thing was certain: she was no longer the same girl who had arrived timid and unsure. Smash that like button if your heart is racing as fast as Amora's. Comment who you think the shadowed figure really is, and subscribe. The next morning, Amora woke to a sense of unease. Even the sunlight streaming through the dorm window couldn't wash away the tension in her chest. She dressed quickly, checking the hallway for any signs of the shadowed figure, but everything appeared normal. Still, the notes, the attacks, and his protective presence from the day before had left her restless. In the cafeteria, she found Jizu waiting for her. "Ready for today?" she asked, eyes sharp and calculating. Amora nodded. "I think so. But I don't know what they're planning next." Jizu smirked faintly. "Then you'll have to be ready. And maybe, let someone unexpected help you." Her mind immediately went to him. She felt a rush of warmth at the thought, tempered by fear. But before she could dwell, a familiar shadow appeared across the room. The tall boy leaned casually against a table, dark eyes scanning for her. When their gazes met, her stomach fluttered, a mix of relief, anticipation, and something dangerously magnetic. "You look tense," he said softly as she approached, voice low enough for only her to hear. "Need me to help you relax?" Amora felt heat rush to her cheeks. "I'm fine," she stammered, though her pulse betrayed her. He tilted his head, smirking. "Sure you are," he murmured, stepping closer. The air between them felt charged, every inch of space electric with unspoken tension. "But remember, danger follows you everywhere. And sometimes, it follows me, too." She swallowed hard, heart racing. "I can handle it," she said, though a part of her wondered if she really could. Their chemistry was undeniable. Every glance, every subtle touch, every whispered word sent a thrill through her veins. And yet, lurking beneath the excitement was fear, the constant, gnawing fear of the shadowed figure and the unknown threat that stalked her every move. Classes passed in a blur, but the tension never left. During art class, she was alone, working on a project, when she felt someone approach. She turned, and there he was, leaning casually against her table. "You're avoiding me," he said, a teasing edge to his voice. "Don't tell me you're scared of me, too." Amora felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I'm not scared of you," she murmured. "Good," he said, stepping closer, so close that their arms brushed. "Because you might need me. And you might enjoy it." Her pulse surged. The audacity of his words, the nearness, the danger, it was intoxicating. Her thoughts scattered, heart racing uncontrollably. She wanted to step back, but the pull toward him was stronger than reason. Before she could respond, the door slammed open, and the shadowed figure appeared again. Their eyes met, and Amora froze, heart pounding. "You're getting too close," the figure hissed. "And now, you'll regret it." He moved instantly, stepping in front of her, protective and commanding. "Leave her alone," he growled. The figure smirked. "Interesting." Then, without warning, the intruder lunged. He reacted instinctively, blocking the attack, every movement precise and powerful. Amora watched, awe and fear mingling in her chest. He was dangerous, skilled, and undeniably magnetic. She felt a jolt every time their hands brushed, every time his voice spoke in low tones meant only for her. When the figure finally retreated, vanishing into the hallway, Amora exhaled shakily. I don't know what to do anymore," she admitted. He looked at her, eyes softening for a fraction of a second. "You don't have to do it alone." "Not anymore. I'll help you. But you have to trust me." Amora's heart skipped. Trusting him felt dangerous, thrilling, terrifying all at once. I trust you," she whispered. He stepped closer, so near that their breaths mingled. "Good," he murmured, voice low and intimate. "Because tomorrow, things get even harder." And I'll need you alert. Every second. That night, in her dorm, she couldn't sleep. The adrenaline, the fear, the undeniable chemistry between them made her restless. Every shadow, every sound made her heart race. And yet, there was a spark of exhilaration she couldn't deny. She was no longer just surviving, she was alive in a way she had never known. The next morning, the tension escalated further. During lunch, a new note appeared on her tray: "Your protector can't save you forever. He won't be there when it counts." Amora's hands trembled as she read it, but she refused to show fear. Instead, she slid the note into her pocket, determination flaring. Whoever was behind this thought they could intimidate her, but they hadn't learned yet that she wasn't so easily broken. He appeared beside her, dark eyes assessing her. "Trouble?" he asked casually, though there was a sharp edge in his tone. She shook her head. "Nothing I can't handle." His gaze softened, but the intensity remained. "Good. Because soon, there will be no running. Only facing it head on. Together." Amora's pulse raced. The closeness, the danger, the undeniable attraction. Amora exhaled shakily, leaning slightly against him. I can't believe it was them," she whispered. He looked down at her, a faint, reassuring smile tugging at his lips. "It's over for now. But we'll need to stay sharp. They're clever, dangerous, and they won't stop. But neither will we." Her heart thudded in her chest, but she felt a thrill she couldn't deny. Danger and attraction intertwined, electrifying every fiber of her being. She had survived so far not just because of luck, but because of courage, determination, and him. Later that evening, the adrenaline still thrumming, they walked together under the dim campus lights. Their shoulders brushed, sending sparks through Amora's chest. "You were amazing today," she murmured, unable to stop the words. He smirked, dark eyes locking on hers. "Not as amazing as you. You stayed calm, focused, and strong. I think you're incredible." Amora felt her cheeks flush, heat rising. "You really think so?" He stepped closer, their faces inches apart. "I know so," he whispered, voice low and intimate. "And I want you to know how remarkable you are." For a heartbeat, time froze. The danger of the school, the chaos of the day, the lingering threat, all of it vanished, leaving only them. Amora's pulse hammered, the intensity between them electrifying. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face again, a tender, teasing motion that made her heart race. "You trust me," he murmured. "I do," she breathed. He smiled faintly, leaning just slightly closer, lips hovering near hers. "Then, stay close. Always." Before she could respond, a faint sound echoed from the dormitory behind them, a subtle reminder that the danger wasn't gone. The shadowed figure's warning still lingered, the threat of the unknown still real. Amora shivered, a mix of fear and exhilaration coursing through her. She had survived, learned to fight, and found a connection she had never imagined. But the school's shadows were still there, waiting, watching, and testing her limits. And yet, as she looked up at him, standing protectively by her side, she felt a rush of certainty. She wasn't alone anymore. And together, they were unstoppable. If your heart is racing like Amora's, hit like, comment who you think will strike next, and subscribe. The final twist is just around the corner, and trust me, you'll be on the edge of your seat. The night settled over the campus, quiet yet tense. Amora lay in her bed, the memory of his gaze, his protective stance, the teasing smirk, and the electricity between them replaying in her mind. She knew one thing for sure, the shadowed threats were far from over, but with him by her side, she was ready for whatever came next. Her phone buzzed, a final note from the intruder: "Enjoy your little victory." This was only the beginning. Amora smiled faintly, determination blazing in her eyes. The challenges ahead would be fierce, the danger real, but she was no longer afraid. She had strength, courage, and a connection she could never ignore. And somewhere in the shadows, he smiled too, the smoldering, magnetic protector she had learned to trust and maybe love, ready to face the next chapter with her. If you made it this far, lovelies, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe for more stories like this. Share to your friends so they can also be a part of us. See you all in the next story.